Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 27th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Russia's economy is facing hypothermia risks as it cools, with the ruble near 80 to the dollar. Following comments from Donald Trump about Vladimir Putin, Russia's stock market experienced a dive, and Trump indicated he's considering more sanctions. Russia suggested Trump has emotional overload after he called Putin crazy over Ukraine attacks. Putin approved a Russian company's acquisition of Agriko's Russian assets, while Gazprom is selling offices near Moscow for $129 million. Putin also suggested services like Microsoft and Zoom should be strangled in Russia. Metals billionaire Potanin acquired a minority stake in Russia's Google. Russia claimed to have foiled a drone attack on Vladimir Putin's helicopter after Donald Trump's fury. Intelligence suggests Russia is planning new offensive operations in Ukraine, and Russia seized Ukrainian border villages as its bombing campaign slows. Russia is backing Turkey to host new Ukraine talks after nixing Vatican involvement. Russia chided Germany's merits over remarks on long-range attacks. Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan and President Putin held talks in Moscow, where Fidan warned of regional chaos in a meeting with the Russian FM, a day after meeting Putin. Turning to the United States, stock futures are increasing ahead of Wall Street's reopening after a holiday. A large U.S. pension fund sold its Apple stock and invested in Meta, WHAM, and McDonald's. Central banks are playing a significant role in pushing up gold prices due to economic uncertainty caused by past U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies. The U.S. is experiencing trade tensions with Beijing, which contributed to PDD Holdings Inc. shares tumbling 17% after quarterly sales and net profit missed estimates. Apple is shifting iPhone production for the U.S. away from China. In China, authorities initiated efforts to increase the yuan's global influence after the 2008 financial crisis, but have achieved limited success. Trade tensions between Beijing and Washington contributed to PDD Holdings Inc. shares tumbling 17% after quarterly sales and net profit missed estimates. OES Group projects Hong Kong to be the top IPO venue in 2025, driven by Chinese firms seeking alternatives to U.S. assets. Huawei Technologies is promoting its Ascend AI chip-based supernode architecture as a competitor to NVIDIA's Envil 72 system for data centers. Meanwhile, Turkey is ready to host Russia-Ukraine talks again to achieve lasting peace, with Russia's backing after nixing Vatican involvement. Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan and Russian President Putin held talks in Moscow, where Fidan warned of regional chaos in a meeting with the Russian FM, a day after meeting Putin. Finally, in Ukraine, intelligence suggests Russia is planning new offensive operations, according to Zelensky. Russia cites Ukrainian border villages as its bombing campaign slows. Turkey is ready to host Russia-Ukraine talks again to achieve lasting peace, with Russia's backing after nixing Vatican involvement. India's economic landscape presents a nuanced picture, with both promising developments and persistent challenges. UBS has revised its outlook on Indian equities to neutral, emphasizing a shift towards domestic and defensive sectors within emerging markets, while also acknowledging the nation's elevated risk premium. Zerodha CEO Nitin Kamath has cautioned against over-reliance on GDP figures as a sole indicator of economic well-being, advocating for increased investment in research and development. Despite these reservations, a Reuters poll suggests that Indian stocks are likely to reach new record highs. The Sensex experienced volatility, settling 625 points lower before later plunging 604 0.82 points, reflecting mixed global signals and pressure from financial and its sectors. Analysts are suggesting stocks such as ITSE and Hero Motor Corp, anticipating a robust monsoon season in 2025, which is vital for agriculture and broader economic prosperity. Several significant financial activities are occurring in India. Jio BlackRock Asset Management and BlackRock have secured SEBI approval to commence their mutual fund operations in India, with Sid Swaminathan appointed as MD and CEO. ADB Financial Services Limited, along with an HDFC unit, are approaching SEBI approval for IPOs valued at $1.50 billion. Lead investors are making substantial investments in India's largest multi-asset continuation vehicle, but is considering reducing its stake in ETC. Coal India is planning to launch its first unit public through a consultancy firm IPO. LIC reported a 38% increase in net profits for the January-March quarter, reaching Yuan 19,013 crore, and declared a final dividend of yield at 12 per share. Small cap construction sector stock capacity infra projects rose 6% following its Q4 result. India's regulatory framework is also undergoing changes. SEBI has expanded the authority of exchange boards in the appointment of management. Equity derivatives expiries are now limited to Tuesdays and Thursdays. India considers a trade agreement with the US vital for mitigating external vulnerabilities. Shipments of iPhones from India to the US saw a 76% year-on-year increase in April. Indian shares have benefited from tariff relief granted by the EU. India has reaffirmed its forecast for abundant monsoon rains following an early arrival, which is crucial for the nation's agricultural sector and overall economic stability. China is facing economic headwinds, including a housing downturn and high youth unemployment, but industrial profit growth accelerated in April due to policy measures. Beijing is monitoring used car trading to boost automotive sector profitability, which is contributing to stock declines. China is improving corporate governance to enhance its global competitiveness. ByteDance has upgraded its Dubao chatbot with video call capabilities. Python and Sugon are merging to create a supercomputing giant to withstand US sanctions. Xiaomi is now a major player in China's EV market. Alibaba, Meituan, and JD.com are fiercely competing in the fast delivery sector, with Alibaba reporting over 40 million daily orders through its Taobao instant commerce and ELE. The Shanghai Futures and Energy Exchanges have joined the Yuan Sustainable Stock Exchanges initiative. China plans to open Xinjiang to more foreign visitors to increase tourism revenue. China accuses Taiwan of launching a cyber attack on a Chinese tech company. Hong Kong is developing into an international data trading hub, forging connections with mainland China and Southeast Asia. Hong Kong stocks, especially in the auto sector, have experienced declines. The United States saw a rebound in consumer confidence in May, partly due to easing trade tensions with China. That died. Taiwan is accused by China of cyber-attacking a tech company. Kenya is partnering with China and a $3.70 billion pension fund to construct a key road. In the Middle East, Popmart International's Labu plush toys are gaining popularity, marking a successful global expansion. Japan has appointed Stephen Hayes Dacus as the new CEO of 7-Eleven Japan, marking the first time a foreigner has led the convenience store chain. After 34 years, Japan has relinquished its position as the world's top creditor nation to Germany. The Ministry of Finance is gauging market sentiment regarding potential bond sale amounts and considering reducing its super long bond issuance. Concerns are rising about the ease with which foreigners can purchase property in Japan. The country considers potential tariffs imposed by the Trump administration a significant threat and a national crisis for its economy, despite the tariffs being largely paused. To counter these concerns, Japan has approved a $6.30 billion plan to shield its economy from potential tariffs, addressing worries about rising prices and government debt. Nippon Steel is expected to finalize its acquisition of U.S. Steel at $55 per share following President Trump's approval, who characterized it as a partnership. The Nikkei closed higher after reversing course, driven by a sharp decline in yields and a weaker yen. Asia stocks remained muted due to trade caution, and Japan's market experienced a dip following comments about a potential Bank of Japan rate hike. Franklin Templeton highlights Japan's ability to bring resilience to diversified portfolios. Japan System Techniques has announced strong fiscal year 2025 results. Turning to Hong Kong, 3Coins, a retailer based in Osaka, is expanding its presence in the retail property market despite the current slump, with plans to open its first store in Causeway Bay in mid-July. Saudi Arabia's economic landscape is marked by both challenges and progress. The Saudi index recently hit its lowest point since April, reflecting market volatility. However, non-oil exports showed a strong increase of 13.4% in the first quarter, signaling successful diversification. The ASEAN region's growth is further fueled by a $1.06 billion investment influx, bringing the total past $6 billion. To optimize its debt management, the government is restructuring a $32 billion sukuk, supporting the local market. New sustainable debt guidelines have been approved to encourage responsible financing. An offshore securities business license has also been introduced, attracting billions in foreign investment and aiming for more international capital. Despite these economic moves, Saudi Arabia refuted claims of lifting the alcohol ban before the 2034 World Cup. In corporate news, Radar Hazard Control, based in Saudi Arabia, is reportedly considering a sale. The Flynas IPO was priced at $80, driven by high investor interest. Immunity Bio has partnered with Saudi entities, including the Ministry of Investment, KFSRC, and CAMRE, to introduce the Cancer BioShield platform in the Middle East. Unconfirmed reports suggested government funding for Osim Hen's potential move to Al Hilal, as well as Cristiano Ronaldo's agreement to join Al Hilal. European markets rallied after President Trump postponed planned 50% tariffs on EU goods until July 9. This fueled hopes for a potential trade agreement. European shares also gained due to a boost in defense stocks, influenced by threats of sanctions against Russia. European insurance companies are facing substantial losses, estimated at $3.50 billion, from wildfires in Los Angeles. Renewed interest in nuclear energy is emerging in Europe as part of a broader strategy to enhance energy independence. Volvo Cars is implementing layoffs, partly in response to tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. French President Emmanuel Macron is visiting Vietnam, partly motivated by these tariffs. South Korea is seeing robust economic and technological developments. The South Korean won has surged to a 7-month peak. This increase elevates the likelihood of a rate reduction by the Bank of Korea. Scrutiny is intensifying on the country's one exchange, one bank rule. Concerns about global competitiveness and potential market vulnerabilities are driving this review. Defense SMEs are increasingly exploring initial public offerings to leverage the thriving market conditions. OpenAI is growing its footprint by launching a new office in Seoul. The company views South Korea as a vital AI infrastructure collaborator, driven by substantial ChatGPT demand. In the real estate sector, Mingarvav CEO Chogang Tai predicts that corporate rentals will exert a considerable effect on the housing landscape. Seoul has also secured the honor of hosting the 26th Virtuoso Symposium, DAT. Moving to the United States, President Trump and Congress are jointly working to rejuvenate the domestic shipbuilding sector. Subsidies and penalties aimed at Chinese-built vessels are central to this effort. The endeavor faces hurdles despite the presence of a South Korean-owned shipyard operating in Philadelphia. Russia and Ukraine are locked in intense conflict, with recent overnight drone strikes causing casualties on both sides and resulting in 7 deaths. Moscow launched missile and drone attacks on Kyiv, injuring 8 people. Kyiv and Moscow have also conducted another prisoner exchange after a significant drone and missile strike. Ukraine has notably adopted a new drone strategy. This strategy focuses on targeting Moscow's airports, intending to make the Russian population feel the war's effects directly. Diplomatic efforts continue, illustrated by discussions between Putin and Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan regarding the Ukraine war, which took place after peace talks in Istanbul. Shifting focus to international economic policy, the EU and the UK are advocating for a reduction in the Russian oil price cap, a move that the Trump administration seems reluctant to support. In the United States, Trump has voiced criticism of Putin following a large-scale drone strike by Moscow, prompting a response from the Kremlin. The Kremlin has suggested that Trump's remarks about Putin stem from emotional overload. Germany's economic landscape presents a complex picture. The German Chamber of Industry and Commerce, DIC, forecasts a 0.3% economic contraction for the current year. Countering this, the German stock market has seen substantial gains, driven by capital flows from the United States anticipating interest rate reductions and economic stimulus. The DAX index achieved a record peak as trade friction between the US and the EU diminished, weakening the euro. Shifting gears, Frankfurt has lost its status as Europe's primary cargo airport to Istanbul, according to a German aviation industry report. ThyssenKrupp is undertaking a significant restructuring, actively pursuing substantial naval contracts with India and Australia, totaling approximately $16 billion. Adding to the complexities, German companies are facing increased scrutiny regarding their diversity, equity, and inclusion (DA) strategies. This pressure arises from U.S. corporations reducing or eliminating anti-discrimination programs following policies enacted by former U.S. President Trump. Finally, in a notable policy change concerning the war in Ukraine, the German Chancellor has removed limitations on the types of weapons supplied to Ukraine, despite Russia's warnings about potential nuclear escalation. China's exporters and garment manufacturers are recalibrating their strategies in response to the U.S. tariff policies enacted under President Trump, bracing for potential future adjustment. Vietnam's garment industry shares a similar sentiment, with manufacturers expressing relief after President Trump signaled an absence of tariffs on sneakers and t-shirts. The United States, under President Trump, continues to see its tariff policies influencing global markets and business decisions. The administration's perceived flexibility on tariffs necessitates constant vigilance and adaptability from international businesses. France recently saw President Emmanuel Macron visiting Vietnam, a trip contextualized by shifting global trade dynamics. Sweden witnessed Volvo Cars announcing employee layoffs, a decision partly attributed to the broader economic uncertainties exacerbated by factors such as President Trump's tariff impositions. Australia's stock market saw a volatile trading day, beginning with uncertainty before closing at a year's high. The positive shift was largely fueled by strong performances in the financial and technology sectors. Market confidence was somewhat restored following the U.S. decision to postpone tariffs on the EUA. Harmony Gold completed a significant $1 billion acquisition of Met Copper, which will broaden its footprint within Australia. Macquarie University is now venturing into the US market with its fintech division, setting up competition with existing Australian ETF providers. Furthermore, Australia introduced updated grid connection with the intention of accelerating the integration of renewable energy sources. Japan's Nikkei average closed lower, impacted by the stronger yen. This affected exporter shares. Australia's S&P 200 index also saw declines weighed down by mining stocks. Concerns about Chinese demand contributed to the negative sentiment in Australia. New Zealand's benchmarks and PNZ 50 index edged slightly upward. This small gain provided a contrast to the broader regional trend. South Korea's Kospi faced headwinds, influenced by global economic uncertainties. Trading remained cautious. In the backdrop, former US President Trump paused tariffs on the European Union, providing a temporary boost to US futures. However, this positive effect was short-lived as the dollar faced challenges. Thin trading volumes across Asia reflected the U.S. market closure for Memorial Day. United States National Public Radio initiated legal action against the Trump administration, asserting that the order to reduce its funding was unconstitutional and infringed upon the First Amendment. NPR's chief executive officer strongly defended public media, emphasizing its crucial role in American civic engagement and discourse. Despite ongoing trade tensions between the two countries, a Chinese company specializing in baby products announced its expansion into the United States market, signaling continued economic activity. South Africa is seeing its rand currency weaken ahead of a key interest rate decision. Sanlam, a prominent South African asset manager, is expanding its global footprint by acquiring a 23% stake in Shriram Asset Management Company, AMC, in India. On the technology front, a South African government minister clarified that current regulations will not be adjusted to specifically accommodate Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet service. Shifting to international diplomacy, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has confirmed that Donald Trump has agreed to U.S. participation in the next G20 summit. Brazil's central bank is grappling with slowing inflation, leading to the continuation of high interest rates. Simultaneously, a prominent state bank is contending with rising farmer defaults. Experts are also voicing increased apprehension about the potential hazards of exploring new oil fields. Turning to Canada, its stock market saw positive movement, with the S&P TSX Composite Index increasing by 0.75%. Despite this, predictions indicate a deceleration in the TSX's upward trajectory, primarily due to the economic consequences of the trade war. In Congo, operations at Ivanhoe Mine's copper project have been suspended because of seismic activity, which subsequently led to a decrease in the company's stock value. France sees a blockchain group's plan to acquire 590 Bitcoin, financed by a bond sale. Ghana's stock exchange index has experienced a notable weekly decline, largely attributed to the sell-off of shares in Ghana. Hungary's central bank has opted to maintain its key interest rate, emphasizing the importance of controlling inflation. Separately, the government has prohibited a pro-LGBTQ march for the first time under its crackdown law, marking a significant shift. Kuwait's credit rating has been reaffirmed by S&P Global at A, with a stable outlook. Mexico's stock market has reached a record high, fueled by an upswing in risky assets, following a temporary reprieve from tariff implementations. Norway's wealth fund chief has directed all staff members to utilize AI in their work. Pakistan's stock market is bracing for instability amidst concerns surrounding a budget heavily reliant on taxes, as mandated by the IMF. Portugal and Spain are bracing for an intense heat wave originating from Africa, which is expected to drive temperatures upward. Russia saw Turkey's foreign minister Biden meeting with President Putin in Moscow. Singapore is becoming a popular destination for the ultra-rich to store gold, driven by economic uncertainties and market volatility associated with Donald Trump. The country is also actively investing in the development of localized AI models. Tokyo's stock market has continued its upward trend, bolstered by a weak yen. The United States and Europe will see ArtNet acquired and taken private by a European-American investment firm. And that's a wrap for today's news. Because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.